I'm Billy Hollowell, and welcome to Newsmakers, a show where we bring you interviews with pastors, actors, entertainers, and other notable news figures. On today's show, we're going to be getting into some fascinating topics, but before we do, if you are not subscribing to Newsmakers, make sure you head on over to wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe right now. Give us a rating. We love 5-star reviews. This is a show where you're going to dive deep into important issues with amazing people. With no further ado, here is today's show. On today's Newsmakers, pro-life activist Kristan Hawkins' journey to leading Students for Life of America has been a pretty incredible one. It started very young when she was a teenager working at a crisis pregnancy center. Today, she goes viral often for her interactions with pro-choice students on campuses across America. Today, she joins us to talk about that journey, as well as the infighting and sometimes difficult interactions that unfold even within the pro-life movement. A lot to talk about today. With no further ado, let's welcome Kristan to the podcast. Well, Kristan, we've got a lot to break down today, a lot to talk about. Before we get into the current debate that is going on within the pro-life movement, I actually want people to understand, because they see your videos, they hear your podcast, they see the things that you and your organization are doing, incredible work. But what was it for you that led you into this work, into this pro-life ministry?
Yeah, I actually got involved in the, quote, pro-life movement at a pregnancy center. And I think that's where, it really inspired me in so many ways in my pro-life activism, because I was raised in an evangelical home. I remember going to, like, my mom made me ride my bike one year in the parade for our county right to life, our lifesaver float, And so if going into the pregnancy center at 15, I would have been one of those people that I often meet on campuses, right? Of, I don't like abortion, but I can see a justification here, or what if this happens? But really entering that pregnancy center, starting to volunteer, meeting the women, I had a unique opportunity to become a counselor very early. Most pregnancy centers don't let teens become counselors. They allowed me, and really getting to hear their stories really opened my eyes to this huge issue of abortion that often in online debates, as you know, Billy, gets oversimplified a lot. And really hearing the stories of these women who were coming into the center desperate. I mean, going and talking about your sex life to a complete stranger, right? They had nobody else to talk to. And Mother Teresa talks about, the worst form of poverty being that relational poverty, right? They're living with a boyfriend who's abusing them, but yet is feeding them and their 2-year-old child. They think that they're pregnant. They don't want to have a child that's also going to get beaten like they're getting beaten, and then having to walk with them to say, okay, abortion is still wrong. And I understand your situation. How do we get you out of this situation so you can choose life? So your child who's 2 years old, your preborn baby, can be safe and successful. And it's a much more difficult thing to do, besides just like telling a woman, oh yeah, abortion's wrong, don't have an abortion. That is like super easy. Walking alongside a woman and seeking social justice with her, that is difficult work.
Yeah, and there's so many layers to it, right? And there's so many different needs that women have, and there's so much judgment. And obviously, that's part of what we're going to talk about in a minute, and some of the debate that is going on around this. But one of the things about your videos that I think strikes everyone is your ability to just confront and interact, and you're always ready. I mean, they're very comical, but they're not just comical. You walk away understanding. I mean, I've never seen a video where you haven't shut someone down and shown them the truth. What goes into that preparation for you
Mm.
I mean, you seem ready for it every time.
I'm not. It's funny because I'm not the most gifted person, I would say, on my team. We have about 110 team members who are incredible at Students for Life. And when we're on campuses with our 1,500 Students for Life groups, we always are tracking the number of conversations we're having, the number of activations to the pro-life movement, someone who's pro-life who now is going to join the pro-life movement, and then the number of conversions, people we talk to who are rapidly pro-choice, then somewhat, pro-life or whatever, they're on the 6-point scale. And I would say if you would put me up against most of my staff, they would beat me in those one-on-one conversations, because I've been told you can read what I'm thinking, from through my face. But it's so funny because I think it's a unique example of how God can use every one of us and the gifts that we've been given. So I have a unique gift of not being afraid to have people scream at me, not be afraid to get yelled at on campus, and to say what I'm actually thinking. And in this day and age on social media, that does really well. Um, I don't think it's the best on one-on-one conversations when you're having those long conversations with someone who really wants to understand. But it's great for social media because of those videos and because the people act so crazy on campuses. I've gotten to meet several babies that have been saved because their mom saw the video. And so I don't know, I just always think of it as such a great testament of how God can use all of us, and whatever our skill set or strengths may be, he can put it to work for his kingdom. And to think like, yes, these videos, you know, um, how they've gone viral, the 250 million views those videos had just last year alone, how he's using those videos to change hearts and minds and move people on this issue. But yeah, I do a little bit of prep work, try to stay up on my reading in the pro-life movement, obviously, of what's going on in the news, how to actually persuade. But really, for me, it's just calling out the illogical positions and really trying to just. Sometimes the best videos I find that we've done are ones where I didn't really talk that much. I just got the person talking to the point where they had to expose their own illogical viewpoint, because being pro-abortion is something that is illogical with most people's standards or morals or their values, whatever they call them, right? Because even some of the most rabid pro-abortion people I talk to, they care about children, they care about the environment, but then when it comes to abortion, they don't. And so it's just trying to point that out to them and hoping that I can plant a seed, in their heart when they realize, wow, I didn't answer that question correctly, or why was she able to say that? I plant a seed in their heart, but then also be able to educate millions online.
Yeah, no, I love that because the other side, which you mentioned, is having these women or even men who see these videos and these interactions, right? On one side, people are entertained by them or intrigued by them or they're getting them to think differently. But then there are actual lives that can be saved as a result of those women and men thinking about what it is you're challenging those other people on.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting layer of this. Now, you obviously, over the last week and a half or so, you've had a very interesting online sort of presence. I mean, you always do, but there's been a little bit of a debate. And I have a
Mhm.
message in front of me here that you've seen that was written about you. And it's interesting because the centerpiece of this message seems to be a frustration that you believe that women who quote unrepentantly murder their child in the womb are victims, right? And that there's frustration that you would see women as victims. Some have said there's blood on your hands. I mean,
Oh,
you've
yeah.
seen these
Oh, yeah. No, there were
messages.
tweets, that one thing, a lot of them were like, and she's fat too. So there's, body shaming. Then there were tweet replies to, but this is why women shouldn't be leaders. This is why Eve was
Oh
fallen
wow.
victim to Satan. There was a whole podcast using me as an example for why women can't be leaders. There were other tweets out there about Kristen has more blood on her hands than Planned Parenthood, which, has killed like over 10 million babies in the last like 10 years. So that's obviously incorrect.
Why?
So
Why are they saying like from your
why?
perspective, why? Yeah.
Um, it's interesting. So about 2010, a group started called Abolish Human Abortion. Our mission at Students for Life has to been abolish abortion. Since I launched in 2006. 2010, a group called Abolish Human Abortion started. Now they've changed names 4 times. Now they're Abolitionists Rising, and there's a bunch of them. And the concept was that they wanted to mimic the slavery abolitionists. That they wanted to, simply trying to pass laws that were passable with the political, hand that were dealt is unacceptable. That unless we are advocating for the complete end of abortion and punishment for everyone involved in abortion, you're not really pro. These folks don't even call themselves. They hate pro life, but you're not really anti-abortion unless you're doing those things. And it's really interesting because, we had a bill a couple years ago in Oklahoma called the Life at Conception Act, which made all abortions illegal, which criminally punished abortionists who would knowingly violate the law, but did not put women in jail who saw abortions. And these guys spent a lot of time and money trying to defeat this bill, a bill that banned all abortions. But were angry, and there were, all the attacks that you see online, they were there in Oklahoma because it didn't also punish women. Their viewpoint is that unless you subscribe criminal punishment to mothers, you'll never really end abortion. And so if and it's simply, I mean, I was one of these folks came to a campus that was at MSU, Michigan State, last spring, and she started engaging in a respectful conversation. They were protesting me outside, but then she came in, and she just kept saying the word justice. This is justice. This is justice. And the word I never heard was mercy. Like, I was praying about this yesterday. We were doing the Lord's Prayer in church, and I was like, where is the biblical justification that it's all about justice, it's not about mercy? Because, like, you can go, was it in Luke where the disciples had asked Jesus to, like, rain fire down on the city, and he rebuked them, and they moved on, right? The woman at the well, Jesus did not set an example of seeking justice at the behest of mercy. Mercy was always first. And so it's like this misplaced view. And I understand, like, I want to end abortion as fast as humanly possible. However, I am like that's what I want to do. That's what I get up every day doing. This is not the fastest way to end abortion. Blowing up pro-life laws, like we've introduced laws before in Indiana after Roe fell to end all abortion in Indiana. We did not have a rape exception in that law. Absolutely not, because your circumstances of conception do not change your value as a human. Legislators added an exception into the law. And I remember I had a staff member at the time was like, well, should we fight against the bill now? Even though it's our bill, they hijacked it. And I said, no, like, who am I disagree with it. We're going to have to come back and fix the law after it passes. And we should work behind the scenes to, like, get that exception taken out of the law. But who am I to say, I'm going to blow up this bill and we're going to condemn all the babies to die because we weren't able to save a few? And it's like, I am
So
not.
it's more about moving the needle,
Yes,
right? It's
absolutely.
about moving the needle in your view. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, they have these people have the view. If you were at facing, like, a burning orphanage and there's children burning alive, and you're only one person and you can only go in, every reasonable person would say you would go in that orphanage and you would save as many children as you can. You would call for help. You would call 911. You would ask people on the street, come in, join me, save all these babies. But no reasonable person is going to stand on the street and be like, well, I can't save all the children at the orphanage, so I'm going to let them all die. That is exactly what these folks are saying that we should do when it comes to legislation. And I morally could not get up out of bed every day and fight in this movement to think that would happen. And so it's disconcerting in that regard. I think it's obviously a sign of a large social movement, which is a good thing, right? We're not as a movement like our brothers and sisters in Europe who are fighting for our mere free speech rights, right? You don't have an abolitionist movement in Europe. They're fighting for just the right to pray silently in their homes against abortion without a neighbor calling on them and them getting arrested, or posting a pro-life statement on X without being arrested. They're in a much different place. I think this is reflective that we are in a different place. So now you have this, like, ultra right wing start, and social movements do this. I mean, the environmentalist movement has eco-terrorists. Civil rights movement had the Black Panthers. I mean, slavery abolition movement had the John Browns. Every movement, you start to see this progression to the alt right, and it's it's damaging and it's disunifying. It takes the eye off the prize. Like, right now we have a legitimate chance to defund Planned Parenthood of our taxpayer dollars. Is that going to end all abortions? No. Is it going to completely put Planned Parenthood out of business? No. But it's going to make them shut down a lot of their clinics that operate in the red. It's going to save a lot of babies, right? And it's huge. This is something the pro-life movement's been wanting to do for 18 plus years since I launched Students for Life. Yet at this critical time when we legitimately have an opportunity through an atheist pro-choice guy leading Doge to do this, they choose now to try to create disunity within the pro-life movement. I would say it's morally unacceptable and atrocious, but that's my view on it.
Well, you have, I mean, you have this moment, and even the debate over 15-week abortion bans, right? I mean,
Yeah.
obviously there's a lot of debate over all of this.
Yeah.
The idea that you either have to ban all abortions or you have to start somewhere and work your way through, it is interesting because it seems like there's never, and maybe I'm wrong, correct me, is there a world in which you could ever get everybody on board with legally banning all abortions? I mean, is that something that
I
is
mean, culturally,
possible
we're
in your
not
view?
there. Yeah, I mean, culturally we're not there. This is why Students for Life focuses on college campuses with young people, where college, culture is made on college and high school campuses. It is it is completely out of the realm of possibility at this moment in 2025 America, except for a miracle from God Almighty, which is always possible, that you would see a complete end of all abortion. Even if you would pass, our federal Life at Conception Act, which recognizes the 14th Amendment's, very clearly defined, calling out the rights of every person to, their right to life. Even if you would pass a Life at Conception Act and all abortions illegal in the country, you're still going to have abortions, just like how there were abortions before Roe versus Wade. There's going to be desperate women. You've had 52 years of women being told having an abortion is nothing. You have sex predators. You have family members. I mean, look at the studies that talk about coercion. Not every woman is coerced to have an abortion, but a majority of them are. You have women who still today, there was a video I put up this weekend on my Instagram of a girl telling me that her child within her that she aborted was just water. It was nothing. And it's still like, it was like, do
Wow.
you actually believe that? Like, and so there's cognitive dissonance, right? Like, if you don't want to believe something, they don't. And they can use the lies that the feminist movement's been feeding them for all these years to then justify this act. So even if you pass a law ending all abortions, say abortions would still happen because culture is not there. That is why we always say in the pro-life movement, ending abortion is twofold. It's making abortion unavailable, illegal, putting the abortion cartel out of business, but it's also unthinkable for young women across America to start thinking of abortion as an antiquated, regressive idea. And that's very important. So there is no one silver bullet that's going to achieve it unless we do both of these things, just like how other social movements have done it.
Yeah. Well, and I have to let you go in a minute, but this idea that we should punish women that some people have, right? And I think
Mm.
when you look back at this is not a new idea. It's come again and again and again. What would be, and you already said it, but I want to just kind of end on it. What would be your biggest argument for not doing that? I mean, you just were speaking to some of the informational channels and how they've impacted women, but just break that down before we go.
I think, when someone comes up to me, is like, well, why don't we do this? I talk about the war on drugs. Most of us would agree that the war on drugs was a pretty big failure. We spent billions of dollars. We incarcerated users, addicts who have ridiculously high recidivism rates. We have flooded the foster care system with children who've been separated from their families because their parents are drug addicted. Then they have to go to jail, which has traumatized a generation of kids. I meet these kids every day on campuses who tell me they wish they were aborted because they were placed in foster care because of drugs. Yet the cartels roamed free. And so today we're in this, now you have President Trump saying we've got to build a wall. We're listing the cartels as terrorists. He has the right idea about this. You have to end the supply. If there are no cartels, they're not going to be funneling drugs into our country to create a society of addicts who are then going to put their children at harm. And so I think it's about being smart about the approach. What's actually going to end abortion in the fastest way possible? It's putting the abortion cartel out of business, defunding Planned Parenthood, continuing to attack them until we shut them down, shutting down every single local mom and pop abortion facility that there is, first ending the, supply of abortion, while also promoting what we do in the pro-life movement, the 3,000 pregnancy centers and maternity homes, which 75% of our neighbors don't know exist, which every year for the past 3 years, we've polled Gen Z and Gen Y voters, asking them, majority of whom are Democrats, we asked them, if you believed every woman had the resources she needed to choose life, would you then be more supportive of voting for politicians who limit abortion? More than 70% say yes. Ending abortion becomes a 70% issue if people know there's resources that already exist, but people don't know that they exist. So, like I said, there's so many things we've got to do, but going after an individual and then trying to prove, like, how are you going to prove every single woman knew she was killing her baby? Are you going to go after every man, every deadbeat dad who gives her the money? How are you going to prove that the deadbeat dad, like, it becomes like this logistical nightmare that does not make sense. It's not going to quickly eradicate the violence of abortion. We want to eradicate abortion, all abortion. We want to protect all babies. It's so being obsessive about persecution and putting people in jail and saying that's the way forward. Honestly, it's not the fastest way to do it. I understand people are like, well, that's consistent because, if abortion's murder, then we should treat her like a murderer. It's a little different than that. It's a little bit more nuanced. And also, you can be inconsistent and be morally wrong. Bill Maher is very consistent about his views on abortion, but he's also morally
Yeah.
wrong. We're not going to end abortion that way. It does harm to the pro-life movement. Like these comments that the attacks that they've been waging against me online, I'm like, pro-choice people are watching how you act, and the anti-woman comments, the comments about my looks, the comments calling me baby, like, that is not winning anybody over to this movement. In fact, it's saying, look, we told you these pro-lifers don't care about women, they hate women, that all you're doing is helping to fuel those lies and those misconceptions that they have, that creates more work on my end when I'm on campuses trying to have conversations with pro-choice students.
Well, Kristan, I appreciate you breaking this all down. We'll have you back again
Yeah.
soon. You're doing important work and appreciate you taking the time today.
Yeah, please pray for me and all of our Students for Life chapters. I appreciate that.
That's all for today's Newsmakers. Thank you so much for tuning in, and be sure to head on over and check out the new documentary investigating the supernatural miracles. You can find that at cbn.com/supernatural. We dive into some incredible miracles, investigating whether they still happen today and what is unfolding in various scenarios across America. Again, it is cbn.com/supernatural, and tune in for the next episode of Newsmakers. We'll see you later.